My name is Susan Heald. I am the Textile Conservator at the National Museum of the American Indian, and I'm here today to show you how to roll a flat textile for storage. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is handling textiles and the use of gloves. I'm really particular about the type of gloves I use for handling textiles, and this is a cotton type that's sewn together, and I really don't like these gloves for handling textiles because they often fit very loosely, and you really need to have good manual dexterity when you're handling textiles. Textiles are often fragile, they're flexible, they're large, and these type of gloves will impede your manual dexterity, and they can also leave lint behind. So they're good for some things, for ceramics and handling metals, but I don't like them for handling textiles. There's also latex gloves. You can see this is an old latex glove. People don't use latex much anymore because some people have latex allergies. And this is another example of a bad fitting glove. If you're going to use the latex or other plastic gloves, you need to have them fit tightly. And you can see that this has these brown marks on it. The latex gloves definitely will have a shelf life, and they'll start to oxidize and turn brown, and they'll get weak. So if you do use latex gloves, you want to make sure you're not hanging onto them too long. The preferred type of gloves we use now are nitrile gloves. And these are 3 examples of different thicknesses and colors of nitrile gloves. There's different brands, and some of the sizes run a little bit differently. These are, I think, Kimberly-Clark gloves. And these fit me really well. This is a small, they fit tightly. I'll have good control, good manual dexterity with these gloves. And this is what I prefer to use. The gloves will protect you from any pesticides or hazardous material that are on the textiles, and they'll protect the textile from the oils on your fingers. In some cases, I prefer not to wear any gloves at all, and that's if you're working with a textile that's extremely fragile, like maybe a really fragile, deteriorated silk textile, because the kind of tackiness of the gloves will pull up bits of the silk. So I'm going to work with these gloves. Oh, and the other thing is you want to make sure they're powder-free. If you use powdered gloves, the powder can come out of your gloves and it'll go over the surface of your textile. So even if you can't see it, you still will have cornstarch on the surface of your textile. So now I'm going to start to roll this textile. We use an acid-free tube. This is a 2-inch acid-free tube. Sometimes we can use 3-inch. Mostly we use 2 or 3-inch diameter tubes. That's the size. And it's good to cut your tube about 2 to 3 inches longer on either end. And that's so you have a handling margin that the textile is not rolled on. This one's a little short for this textile. And when you're getting ready to roll a textile, you want to make sure that you're rolling in the warp direction most often. So the warp is like the warp is what you weave on, like Navajo looms. The warp is going up and down. With backstrap looms, the warp is in front of you, and that is like the backbone. That's the strongest element. So you want to roll in the direction of the warp. So with this textile, there's 2 parts. These were woven on a backstrap loom. They're sewn together down the middle. These stripes are in the direction of the warp. And sometimes when you have a seam textile, you want to be careful when you roll. If you have a lumpy seam, you're going to get it extra thick there. This textile is, they're butted up together like this, so it's a pretty even thickness. So the first thing I like to do is you want to start on a clean surface. This is Tyvek that I have down on this surface, so it's going to be nice and slick and smooth and clean. I can see any dirt, or I can see any fibers that might come off the textile while I'm working with it. And let's see. And I like to have it set up so that the center of the textile will be going right in front of me. So even when you have some waviness, or if it's not square, you can kind of adjust and make sure that your tube is going to be perpendicular to the center of your textile. And the first thing you want to do is roll the leader. This fabric, it's a white cotton fabric. It's unbleached muslin, actually cotton print cloth from Test Fabrics. And I'm going to roll it really tightly and evenly. smooth out all the wrinkles and have it on there really tight. Okay. So I'm going to bring the textile forward towards me a little bit. You might, if you had a fragile textile, you wouldn't want to drag it towards you. This one is pretty strong. So I'm going to orient it like this. Okay, so make sure this is parallel with the edge of the table. That looks like it's perpendicular. Okay, so we're going to start. So what the leader does is, as you have your textile positioned on top of the fabric leader, so as you start to roll, it'll catch that edge. And which is really good if you have fringe, if you have a warp fringe and where a fringe was coming out this way, it'll help you to catch all that fringe really nicely and neatly as you start to roll. Okay, so I'm rolling, this is a smaller textile that I can roll by myself, and if I'm rolling by myself, I like to stay right in the center. And if it's a really big textile, I'll get up on the table and I'll crawl along behind it and roll it straight. If you're rolling with two people, you want to stand opposite each other and roll together. And this will talk to each other. So, and I don't know if you can see, we have these wavy sides, but we also have some bulges here. And that's going to cause us a little bit of a problem as we roll. And you don't want to roll under too much tension. And you might need to smooth it out as you go along. And sometimes, if you have wavy edges, I'm going to pull this toward me. Sometimes you might have to lift up a little bit on the edges to make it even. Okay, so now I'm in a position where we have this kind of bulge here and here. What we can do with this, these are just Kleenex, you would want to use acid-free tissue. And I inadvertently threw that out after my class the other day. But you can put a little bit of acid-free tissue in where the bulge is going to be. So this one is right here, the next one is going to come up right there. So that'll, as we roll, that'll help to pad out that area. Oh, okay, now I have to do the other side. Okay, let's see how that's going to work. Well, that worked out well on this side. That worked out okay on this side too. So you just don't want to make it too tight. So now for the last step, you can pick this up and bring it towards me. You have to be careful of your back. So the outer part of our textiles at the National Museum of the American Indian, we put mylar on the outside. So this is a 3mm mylar sheet. It's cut just a little bit longer than the width of the textile. And we use mylar because in storage, it's good to see, at least, well, with our directive for our, the way the textiles are housed, is that you open the doors and you can see the textiles, you can see the weave, you can see the color, so you wouldn't roll them unnecessarily. And another option to the mylar would be to roll it in another piece of white muslin that would be on the outside. So then the textile would be able to breathe and it would be covered. But we use the mylar. So I'm going to overlap the edge of the mylar a little bit with the textile. Just going to gently roll it. I'm going to hold on to the edge as we're rolling over the top. You know what? I don't like that. That's too loose. We got to do that again. there we go. That looks pretty even. So again, you really, ideally, you'd like to have at least, I'd say probably 1.5 inches on either end. So you'd have a handling margin to hold onto the textile. This is too close. So in order to secure your roll, you can do two things. This is a cotton twill tape length. We can tie that around to hold it together. And I like to make sure that the tape is flat on the bottom so it's not twisted. And you don't want to tie it too tightly. It'll be tightly enough that you can keep your outer mylar or muslin so that it keeps it closed, but not so tightly that you cinch the textile. So that looks pretty good. Another option, an issue with this is that you have a little bump under the knot. Another option is to use this product. It's a one wrap Velcro, so it's just a single piece. It's got hook on one side, this is the hook side, and then the loop side is on the opposite side. So what you can do is use your one wrap, attach it like that. There's no lumps or bumps, it's really clean. The one thing that I would suggest is that if you use the one wrap, make sure that your hook side is on the inside, because if you have it on the outside, it's going to catch on your clothing. So this has the soft loop side on the outside, and the textile will be protected from the hook side because you have the mylar or the muslin in the outer wrap. And another thing you would like to do when your textile is housed in your collection is to have some kind of identification tied into your ties here. We have our barcode with the catalog number on one side, and then we have a picture about this big of the full textile, so you can see what it looks like. And what that does is it allows for hopefully unnecessary handling, because you can look and you can see the weave structure and look at the overall picture and say, yes, that's the one I want to look at, or no, I don't need to look at that one, so we don't need to unroll it unnecessarily. And also, when you go to house your textile, if you suspend the textile from the edges, from the ends like this, like in a cradle, and it's a large, long textile, what can happen over time is the tube will start to bow, and then that'll put stress on your textile, because instead of having a straight tube, you'll have a bowed tube. So what we do in our collection is to use a piece of steel electrical conduit, just hollow, and we pass it, and it's got nice caps on the end so it won't get caught or cut people, and you're handling it, and the electrical conduit goes through the inside of the tube, and the tube is suspended. And then it goes into a drawer that slides in and out so we can access the rolled textiles. So this is a way to safely house your flat textiles in a rolled format on a tube to keep safely in your collection.